swell. Hello, my dear family and my party people. So this week you may notice I'm standing up. I just figured I'd try it out. I'm experimenting. If I were to say to you, what a week, it would be an understatement this week. This week we visited 6 cities in southern Spain. The first city we stopped at was Trujillo, and in Trujillo they were having a peace rally. It looked like a school full of elementary school-aged children. It was really cool. They had dancers and singers and performers. In Trujillo, we also hiked up to a castle on top of the city, and you could turn around, do a 360, and see the entire city. The peace rally kind of made me wonder about what kind of wars have been going on in Spain recently. When was the Spain Civil War?
The Spanish Civil War lasted from July 17, 1936 to April 1, 1939.
How many wars has Spain been in? It turns out that Spain's been in a lot of wars, the most recent being the war in Afghanistan, which the United States is also fighting. It was inspiring to see all those young kids singing and dancing about peace. Our next stop was Merida, or, as my sister Raya likes to pronounce it, Merida. There were some really cool Roman ruins around that city, and we had a tour guide that took us not only to the ruins, but also around the city. We visited the Roman Colosseum where Roman gladiators would fight it out, and as we walked around and looked down into the arena, I was imagining just crowds and crowds of people going, fight, fight, fight! It was pretty cool. We also saw the museum where there were different statues, and interesting thing, all the statues have similar bodies, but the heads of some of the statues broke off because they were so old, but the heads are different and distinct, and so they didn't want to put the wrong head on the wrong body, so in the museum, the bodies and the heads of some of the statues are just separated. Then we arrived at our hotel in Seville and stayed the night. The hotel offered us a free drink, and of course our group said yes, and so we all had lemonade and orange juice in these super fancy champagne flutes. I felt oh so very fancy. Then the next day we went out to tour Seville. Our tour guide had a British accent. His name was James, and James took us to all the important points of Seville. We started the tour underneath a huge wooden structure that looks like mushrooms, so they call them las cenas, because cenas means mushrooms in Spanish. When he told us they were made out of wood, he said, "You wouldn't believe it, would you?" Throughout history, Romans, Visigoths, Vikings, and Christians all kind of played hacky-sack with ownership of this city. But instead of destroying the mosques that were already built there when the Christians came in and invaded, they decided to repurpose them and use them as cathedrals. There was one red building in particular called El Salvador. This church went through 4 different religion changes. It was like a Russian nesting doll of churches, because way on the base there was the Roman ruins of a church, and then they built another church on top of it, and then so on and so forth until it's the red building that it is today. There was one building that was only half finished, like there were beautiful, intricate carvings of angels and flowers on part of the building, and the other part was just flat, like it hadn't been carved yet. And that was a little bit weird because usually we're used to like ornate, overdone. But this building wasn't done because they didn't have the budget for it. Hundreds of years after the building was first built, the owners of the city decided to try to build it, and they hired a carver, and the carver began carving ladies' faces and flowers and stuff onto the building. One of the faces he carved into the building was Grace Kelly. When the owners of the city found that out, they weren't too happy. Needless to say, the building is still not done. King Ferdinand, who was Alfonso's father, remember Alfonso? He was basically overthrown by his son, and all of the cities in Spain just went along with Alfonso instead of King Ferdinand, except for Seville. So there's a quote all over the city called "No me ha dejado," which means, "You haven't left me. You haven't abandoned me. Seville still loves me." In Seville, we visited the biggest Gothic church in the world. The tower was super high, and our tour guide was like, "Alright then, let's have a guess. How many steps do you think it is to the top?" And I was guessing like 500, 1,000, I didn't know. Then he said 17. There's only 17 steps in the entire tower? Yes, well you see, people were a lot taller back then. There are 35 ramps, and that's so you can take a horse up to the top. You can't use a horse to get to the top today, but back in the day when it was a Muslim mosque, Muslims pray 5 times per day. And to do that, they need someone to go up to the top of the tower and start kind of leading the prayer. So the prayer leaders would ride a horse up all the way to the top and then walk up 17 little steps and then start leading the prayer. The view from up there was incredible. I could show you pictures all day long, but you really just had to be there. Hold on. I paused for the cleaning lady again. Smells fresh in here. Inside of the giant Gothic church, there was the tomb of Christopher Columbus. But our tour guide told us that it's doubtful that that really is his tomb and his remains because The remains of Christopher Columbus have been kind of juggled around different countries. Our tour guide told us that he traveled more posthumously than he did during his life. Apparently there have been over 100 operas written about the city of Seville. To end our day in Seville, we visited a semicircle of a building, and this building was huge and it was incredible. It's called the Frying Pan of Seville because it gets the most direct sunlight. The semicircle shape is supposed to represent open arms to Latin American culture. There's even a moat inside the semicircle that's supposed to represent the Atlantic Ocean, which you have to cross over to get to America. The other students went to go see a flamenco show. I didn't go just because I was feeling kind of tired and I didn't really want to spend 20 euros. If you don't know what flamenco dancing is, here's a brief demonstration. On Thursday morning, we set out for Cordoba. Now, Cordoba houses an ancient Islamic temple. Our tour guide's name was Terry, and he was also British. He was a little older than James. He has 2 teenage daughters. When we very first got there, Terry told us all, "Welcome to paradise. I bet it's not what you expected, but this is paradise." He showed us all around the building, and he told us that the red and white alternating kind of arch pattern inside the building was supposed to represent palm trees. Now, you think about the pyramids or even the Salt Lake Temple, it takes a long time to build big buildings. But this building was built in 10 months. That's incredible! They just used some old Roman pillars that were lying around, and they got the thing done with a lot of teamwork. There were seashell patterns on the walls. He told us the legend of the oyster, who went up to the surface and opened its mouth and caught a ray of moonlight coming into it, closed it, went back to the bottom, and a pearl formed. He says that it's representative of prayer, and how the moonlight changes into a pearl is how our faith is supposed to develop. I liked that metaphor. All over the building there were cracks in the walls and the ceiling. It's because of this ginormous earthquake that went down in Lisbon, Portugal, and it lasted for 7 minutes. I've never been in an earthquake before, but just 10 seconds of the world shaking is terrifying. There was a huge earthquake, and it shattered not only that important historic building, but other buildings around it. Thankfully, a lot of reconstruction is going on, and the buildings and the people are all healing. He also showed us an old Roman bath that they'd converted into a flamenco bar, so we all got up on stage and did a little flamenco dancing. Then we arrived in Granada. The city of Granada has a huge, ancient castle called La Alhambra. It's not really a castle, it's more of a palace. It was the palace of an ancient sultan. In Spanish, the word Granada means pomegranate, so the inside of this palace's roof looked like the inside of a pomegranate. It was amazing. The gardens were so pristine. All the bushes were cut geometrically like cubes. There were even these 2 cats guarding the way like ancient sphinxes. There were these stairs with water cascading down the rail. I was just amazed that they built this all so long ago and it's still standing. I actually went down the stairs and I heard what I thought were the other students' voices up top, and I was like, oh, they're coming down the stairs. I can scare them. I'm so sneaky. And so I waited and I was like, surprise! And this poor Asian lady was like, I was like, oh no! I totally scared her and I didn't mean to. It was pretty embarrassing, but at the same time, memories made. We then headed to the city of Ubeda, and on the way there we saw mountains covered in olive trees. Just covered. We looked out over what is called the Sea of Olives. It was amazing. And we went into a shop and they had free samples of olives. So I tried one. I'm not a huge olive person, but let me tell you, these olives were amazing. There's just something so pure and clean about the olive. I don't know if I'm describing that right. It's like I bit into it and I was expecting a black olive to kind of taste, but they were green. It was just tasty. I don't know how to explain it better than that. But I will tell you, I won't forget how they taste for as long as I'll live. I wanted to eat all of them. And let me tell you, those olive trees were oil over the place. I hope all those olive salesmen aren't pitted against each other. Okay, I'll stop. Our last stop was Consuegra. So I made a mistake. I thought that the last city we were going to go see was called Ubeda Consuegra. One word. It's not. It's Ubeda and Consuegra. They're 2 different cities. Consuegra had a hill with a castle and windmills on it. Just like the windmills that Don Quixote, the character that we're studying, thought were giants, so he fought them with a lance and then he fell off his horse. I never realized that windmill, literally it's a mill, a flour mill. Because in my mind, windmills have always been to generate electricity by spinning around. Basically how it works is as the blades are turning on the windmill, smaller cogs inside the windmill are also turning to grind up flour from wheat. They would grind up the flour finely for humans and roughly for animals. The entire roof of the windmill can turn based on which way the wind is coming, so if the wind is coming from behind, you can just to make it so that you can get wind from that side. You know, each town we went to, I thought, man, what a view. Man, what a view. Man, what a view! But when I got to the top of that windmill city, man, what a view.
Everything the light touches is our kingdom.
As we walked around inside the castle up there, I thought to myself, I want to live somewhere that's up high that has a view like this. Visiting cities is nice and all, but having the buildings so tall and walking in between them with such little space, I feel like they're just gonna fall on top of me. It's just so peaceful when there's this huge view and it's just serene. So that was this week. Crazy, crazy week. That's all for this week. Ciao for now.